The Golden State Warriors will win the NBA championship this season. This season, the Golden State Warriors are going crazy. Currently, at the time of recording this video, the Warriors are the #1 seed in the Western Conference with a 28-7 record. When going into this season, a lot of people expected Golden State to be a pretty good team, but I don't necessarily think anybody expected this team to be as good as they are currently. And in my opinion, probably the craziest thing about this is they're doing all this without Klay Thompson. But quickly, before we get the video started, for those who may not know, I'm Juicy Sports. I make opinionative NBA content, and if you guys enjoy videos similar to this, please consider hitting that subscribe button, that like button, and that post notification bell. But anyways, let's get into it.
Oh yeah, I work with the medics. I'm about to get you injected. I got a couple connections so I can get you prosthetic.
I know a lot of people may be tired of hearing this already, but it's just the truth. The Warriors are absolutely elite this season. The way that they're playing in the offensive side is just incredible. The Warriors were always known to run great offensive sets under head coach Steve Kerr, and of course that didn't change this season. But this season, I think they've gotten even better, honestly. Of course, for the most part, Draymond really runs the offense and sets everybody up. Steph Curry comes off a down screen for a catch-and-shoot three-point shot, or sometimes they run the offense through Steph as well. Of course, he can create for other teammates, but the difference this year, in my opinion, is Jordan Poole. So in the past, the Warriors had Klay Thompson as their secondary guy, who certainly had the ability to create for himself and sometimes for others, but mostly it was Draymond creating and occasionally Steph as well. But this year, Jordan Poole has emerged. Poole clearly has the ability to score the ball for himself and create for himself on all three levels, either that three-point shot, mid-range shot, or driving all the way to the basket. But Jordan, although not fantastic, also has the ability to create for others at times. And what I mean by this is when Jordan is going off and maybe getting doubled or even sometimes triple teamed, he has the ability and IQ to kick out to wide open teammates, and overall, specifically on a guy like Steph, it just makes his life so much easier, as well as everybody else on the team obviously as well. So just adding Jordan into this offense, in my opinion, just adds another wrinkle into it and just makes their offense so much more effective. But of course, whenever you look around the league for the best teams in the NBA, not only do they have a great offense, but they have a great defense. That's of course probably the most important thing to winning an NBA championship. And when you look at this Warriors roster, clearly they play great defense as well. Now obviously it's been well known that Steph isn't necessarily a good defender, but at the same time I still would say he's an underrated defender in the sense that most people think he's absolutely god-awful, but actually when you watch him out there on the court, he does some things well defensively. But besides Steph, of course you have a guy in Andrew Wiggins who's been a fantastic defender. Draymond Green, obviously we all know he's been a really good defender. Jonathan Kuminga has been a pretty good defender. James Wiseman when he comes back. Andre Iguodala obviously of course as well, although he is getting up there in age. But besides the great individual defenders that the Warriors have, something that the Warriors do very well is play great team defense. And when you pair up together their fantastic offense as well as their fantastic defense, you get an elite team and you get the Golden State Warriors. But why do I think the Warriors will win the NBA championship this season? Well, of course on a broad spectrum, everything that I just mentioned, their fantastic offense as well as their fantastic defense, but looking in at a closer level to their individual players, of course Steph Curry's fantastic, Jordan Poole's fantastic as I mentioned before, all the guys that I mentioned before, but I think the biggest factor and the biggest addition to this team of course is going to be Klay Thompson. The scariest part in my opinion of all the things that the Warriors are currently doing now is they're looking so elite and so talented without Klay. Now this is a big if because he's went through so many different injuries, but if Klay can come back at the very least half of the player he was previously, which I personally think he will, then I think the sky's the limit for this Warriors team. Something that I could see happening for Klay is maybe he comes back to the team and he still has that same three-point jump shot that he had, but he isn't necessarily as good on the defensive side and maybe he can't create as well as he could previously. Now if that were the case, that would certainly kind of suck for Klay, but at the same time I don't necessarily think the Warriors necessarily need that anymore just because they have Jordan Poole on the roster now and he's kind of that third guy that can create for them. In terms of Klay's defense, of course that certainly will be missed, but at the same time Golden State has proven the ability to play great team defense even if they don't have great individual defenders on the court. So even if Klay isn't necessarily able to keep up as well as he used to in the past with individual players, I don't necessarily think it would hurt Golden State as much as you may think. But who are some teams in the NBA that I think could give the Warriors a run for their money? And why do I think Golden State is better than those teams? Well, of course, the main two teams that come to mind are the Phoenix Suns and the Brooklyn Nets. And maybe you can throw the Milwaukee Bucks into that, but I think those four teams in the Bucks, Nets, Suns, and Warriors, it's really going to come down to those 4 teams on who's going to win the NBA championship. Unless a crazy change happens with the Lakers, obviously. But for the Nets, the biggest concern for the Warriors would be, of course, their main stars. The top talent that Brooklyn has is certainly better than Golden State. When you talk about the 3 superstars they have in Kyrie Irving, James Harden, and Kevin Durant, basically no NBA team in the league could even compete with that, and the Warriors are no different. But the reason why I think Golden State could potentially beat them and have a little bit of an edge over them is, in my opinion, Golden State runs as a team a little more fluidly than the Nets do. And although the Nets have more top-end talent, I think Golden State certainly has a deeper bench. And really, when it comes down to the NBA playoffs and the NBA Finals, if they were to meet up in that, I think what it's really going to come down to is, of course, your star players, which both teams have, although the Nets do have some more stars. But on top of that, I think it just comes down to execution and chemistry. And I think certainly the Warriors have a better chemistry than the Nets do, at least currently at this point. But of course, at the same time, I could easily see the Nets winning. It would be a very close matchup. Now, against a team in the Phoenix Suns, that's obviously going to be a very difficult matchup for the Warriors as well. They have similar top-end talent in Booker and Chris Paul, and you can also throw DeAndre Ayton into there. I think he's a fantastic player as well. Unlike the Brooklyn Nets, they have fantastic chemistry. I'm not saying the Nets don't have fantastic chemistry, I just don't think it's on the level of these other 2 teams. So I certainly think this would be a very difficult matchup for the Warriors as well, but in my opinion, I just think the players that Golden State has slightly edges the players that Phoenix has. And when you talk about Milwaukee, I would just flat out favor the Warriors in that matchup, in my opinion. But I certainly do think Golden State is an elite team this year. But we'll see what happens going forward. Maybe throughout the year, Golden State would just continue to get better and better, and maybe once Klay comes back, they'll get even better from there, and then who knows how good they can get as a team going into the playoffs. Or at the same time, of course, the opposite could happen. Maybe a few different players go through some injuries or health and safety protocols. Maybe some players go through droughts in terms of their scoring ability, and maybe Golden State just has a bad stretch and gets worse as a team. Of course, that is possible, but I just think based upon how they're playing now, I think it's a pretty safe bet to assume they're going to be playing like this at the very least around this level for the rest of the year. And going into the playoffs, I just think Golden State is certainly a team that basically nobody wants to see. They're just so talented both offensively and defensively, and in my opinion, as I mentioned before, the real thing that separates them, at least offensively, is how well they run their offensive sets. But anyways, let me know what you guys think in the comments. Do you think the Golden State Warriors will win the NBA championship this season, or do you not think so? But anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and if you did enjoy it, please check out one of these 2 videos popping up now. Until the next time, peace out, guys.
Dosage. Oh yeah, I work with the medics. I'm about to get you injected. I got a couple connections so I can get you prosthetic. Hope you can't go where I'm headed.